Okay, well, that's enough of that. Sitting here all by myself down at the Smart Center. Well, not exactly. My good friend Libby Strong has been kind enough to open up the studio so that I can sit down here and do the show. My usual compatriot in science, Robert Strong, is visiting a friend with some medical challenges, and so I said, you need to go, and who knows, they might call in. We'll see how that works out. This is Radio Science News. Today is, I've been wanting to say this forever, May Day, May Day. All those old movies from World War II when, the pilot got hit in the wing and he's getting ready to bail out, and it's May Day. Well, we're not going to bail out on science today, but today is May 1st, 2021, and this is Radio Science News. And we usually take a little while to get started on this. We'd like to send you to smartcenter.org and find the little, if you go to smartcenter.org, which is kind of the central nervous system for so many of our science-y projects here, you'll find a lot of good things, but you'll see an ancient T-shirt design with Radio Science News on it, and you click that link. That takes you to the launch pad of science, which is actually radiosciencenews.org. Once you're at radiosciencenews.org, you see some interesting information. Click here for audio streaming. That's how you can... Hey, wait a minute. I just clicked on and heard myself with a slight delay. The technology of all this is so daunting. So at the top is a click here for audio streaming. If you're listening to the 11 to 12 broadcasts on Saturday mornings from Smart Center Market, you can just listen to that. Further on the page, you will see that you can hear the rebroadcast. It says broadcast Sundays 2 to 3 p.m. and Wednesday 8 to 9 p.m. on WEJP 107.1 FM. That's Wheeling Community Radio. And then we are also very pleased to be partners with WHDD Robin Hood Radio, which is up in Connecticut. They tout themselves as the smallest NPR station in the United States. So, we're officially on we consider Robin Hood Radio to be the flagship operation of NPR, and so we're very happy to do that. You can hear the broadcast on Sunday, the following any particular broadcast day at 11 to 12 p.m. And then the nice thing about the folks at WHDD NPR broadcast, they are archiving the shows. You can go there and find it on demand, so you don't have to actually wake up in time to check out this whole thing. There's a lot of other great information there. If you look at this page, sometime you'll notice what's in the sky tonight. If you're an astronomy buff, cool stuff there. One of our favorite things is the Andre Rossi blog, where we're following the ECAT, the energy catalyzer. For folks who are wondering about that, you might check into that. But today's episode, Saturday, May 1st, 2021, has a ton of topics, and I probably should just jump into them. As I've often said when Robert and I are conversing, I probably have about twice as many topics up here as I should, and then sometimes I feel like we're rushing through them. So take a look at that page, scroll down. I should have mentioned the International Space Station, if you're a big fan of that. A bunch of things that you can check into. And there's a number that you can actually call in. If you happen to be listening live and you want to call in and rant or rave about something sciencey or contradict one of our theories here, please do so. So topics today: COVID, India, USA vaccination, APA Heritage Month, 50th anniversary of Amtrak, Disneyland reopens, Amazon carbon dioxide. This is about, we think about the Amazon basin as being one of our big buffers, one of our big saviors in the fight against climate change. And right now that might not be the case. That's an interesting point. Because I started thinking about the Amazon basin and the trees and all that exciting stuff, I thought, well, you know what? I'm gonna spend, because I do spend my springtime usually dealing with plants. I'm probably allergic to every plant pollen or every tree plant pollen there is, and that's one of the challenges we all face, particularly here in Appalachia, where we have a beautiful forest blooming right now. We're going to talk about pawpaw trees. We're going to talk about the reintroduction of the American chestnut. I'm going to talk about something that who knows? I might get Libby to drop in here and talk about the poplar biofuel. This is something that we've talked about over the years. You go, well, whatever happened to that fabulous program? It's actually still, I hear laughing in the background. 1980 was the biofuel. Oh my gosh. Hey, see, if you want to sit down and talk about that, okay. So Libby is going by here. She's manning the Smart Center Market, and if you go ahead, put on your headphones there, we'll see how you sound over there. She's an expert on this project because.
Well, if you talk about being introduced to it in 1980, so.
Well, okay, and now my laptop is actually there. If you want to see if you can mess with that, it should be. Is it open to Radio Science News?
There's the launch pad.
Yeah. If you look down there, you'll find the poplar biofuel. It's probably way to the right there. Do you see it? Mm-hmm. So. You probably don't really even need that because you know this from. We're always talking about. We have been talking for years about this because one of the cool things that, as I understand, they developed a hybrid poplar that was even more fast growing than you normally would expect. So I was wondering, since I was going to do this whole theme of forest products, I thought, well, I'm going to see if they're still doing anything with poplar as a biofuel. And so I looked for this particular thing, and it's from Farm Energy. It's and I don't know if it's hooked up with Extension or not, but this was just from last year. So poplar, which is the species Populus, it's really cool, isn't it? And it's about trees for biofuel production. Did yours fire up for you over there, Libby? Yeah. So this is pretty cool. I mean, long story short, now having this page, it has an introduction, current and potential use, biology in it. I mean, this is like a lot of stuff. But what I want to ask what you remember. I remember that this program. Here's how I remembered it. If you had a woodlot, at that time they were looking at it as a biofuel, but mostly for your own consumption. The idea was that you could plant a woodlot. And this thing grows so fast that in a very short time, and I think the time period was just a year or 2 or 3, you could go in and harvest 1/4 of whatever you had planted. And everything at that time, all those trees would basically be 3 to 4 inch, the perfect size for kind of firewood. So you wouldn't be doing any splitting. You would cut everything. You'd cut 1/4 of it to the ground, cut them into your lengths, and you'd have your firewood. And then every year you would do the same thing, and by the time you got around to the place that you cut down, it was ready to harvest again. So that's kind of how I remember. What did you actually remember from that?
Well, I was introduced to it at West Virginia Conservation Camp when I was a sophomore in high school.
We don't want to have to say how many years ago.
Well, no, I said 1980, so I'm giving it away.
Oh, these people can't do math. There's no math experts out there.
So anyway, I remember at the time, I'm pretty sure it was 1980, but I was thinking to myself, wow, this is a great idea, because they were explaining how fast the trees grew. And this, apparently, West Virginia was involved in some of the original research in some point or some fashion. Oh, but it was just really interesting. And then when I started teaching environmental science years later, I couldn't really find too much information about the project. And I'm like, well, that sounded so good, But, when you're a teenager, sometimes you're like, well, maybe I didn't quite get it or something. But
no.
It turns out, apparently, it was a pretty good idea.
So here's what's sad. Not only was it a pretty good idea, I mean, I think it still really is a pretty good idea. I scrolled down and I found out that this actually, as you point out, in the late 70s, it says a hybrid poplar was part of the U.S. Department of Energy Bioenergy Feedstock Development Program. And if you read down through here, it talks about all the things they looked at. But poplars are desirable for biofuels than other woody crops because of their fast growth, their ability to produce significant biomass in a short period, and their high cellulose and low lignin contents. So here's one of those wonderful ideas that I think it is being revisited now that I think we now have people in the EPA, and I even saw a commercial recently where part of the some of the funding that was going to be going out relative to climate change and addressing the climate, they were actually going to be paying. They were saying, when farmers do cover crops, they would actually be paid to do ones that sequestered more carbon. So yeah, I remember this program, and I never knew what happened to it, but wow, something that should be revisited. I'm going to have to send. We're going to send this to our state congressman Shelley Moore, or our senators Shelley Moore Capito and Joe Manchin. Until we're going to lose a congressman, Libby. Did you know that?
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to talk that. The latest census, apparently, we've.
How are they going to do that, though? How do they figure out who's in and who's out?
Well, I think they get together and they do rock, paper, scissors.
Lizard Spock.
I'm not sure what they're going to do. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. Well, there's some interesting questions about that whole population study, which we know is the census, but for somehow it says that we basically have lost so much population in recent years. And I'm going, really? I don't know about that. We'll have to. That's another question. Hey, okay, so did you click on that? Can you use your back button to go back to the checkout? I'm making Libby use my laptop. Remember, it's my Mac Air Lite, and it's
spiffier than mine.
Well, now there should be up in the left-hand corner. There should be an arrow to go back.
Left-hand corner.
Do you see anything up there? Mm-hmm. So if you can go back to the
Launchpad.
There, if you go to the Launchpad, I was going to look at the first one. I was going to look at my tree series. Hey, if you're not too busy, I'd love for you to hang out for my tree series. All
right, I will do that.
So I'm going to go to the Amazon CO2.
Oh man,
this is
Did you watch the special on TV? I can't remember which channel or anything, but I watched something recently.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. They were talking about climate change in that Amazon, and what a gigantic part of the entire equation the Amazon actually is. And one of the things that they didn't even mention that is a real key component as well is that when you cut down the Amazon, you're also changing the albedo, or the reflectivity of the surface.
Yeah.
And that's one of the components in climate change that a lot of people don't really realize. But when you have a surface that actually absorbs more heat than reflects heat, then you got a lot of problems too.
You got more problems.
So I'm sure this article probably talks a lot about it being a carbon sink, and about.
This is mostly about the carbon sink aspect. And the other thing is, I'm going to say, Libby, I know a lot of people, I have friends, they don't know the difference between albedo and libido. So it's very, you got to be careful.
But it's a really key component.
It is.
Because the more ice that melts, the less reflectivity you have, for example, when you're talking about other areas of the world, and it's just.
Well, you're right. Just the whole issue of how much ice layer we have. The big albedo in that term of especially if you think of brilliant white reflective ice, and now it's being replaced by a dark oceanic surface with probably a bunch of algae and things, on the thing. This is the reason why this one I think is really scary is that it says the Brazilian Amazon released nearly 20% more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere over the last decade than it absorbed. And that just shocked me, because the headline is that Amazon may be turning from friend to foe. Now, I mean, to put it in that context, it makes it sound like, well, the Amazon is doing something wrong, but that's
not so much.
That's not so much what it is. And they go through and they give the tonnage. It's from 2010 to 2019. It gave off 16.6 billion tons of CO2, while only taking in 13.9. So you're going, wait a minute, it's a net. Now, you don't want to jump to the conclusion that we ought to just eliminate this, but.
Well, what's really fascinating about this, and again, I've been involved in climate change study for a long time. I mean, not as a scientist per se, but as an educator, and did a lot of climate change teaching when I was full-time in the classroom. And one of the things that's really interesting about this is that not only are you throwing all this carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere quickly, because most of this is slash and burn agriculture.
Exactly,
And so the problem has been in existence for a very, very long time. And in the 90s, the late 80s and 90s, it started to become kind of in the forefront, and that was one of the components when we were studying climate change in the classroom in the 90s, that it was important for the students to understand that, hey, this is not just a small area of the world, and even if it were, it is such an important part of the overall world climate, because climate is not something that is localized,
Right.
and when something changes in one part of the world, it quite often is going to affect everything. And so that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand. They're like, well, this is happening in the Amazon, big whoop-de-doo, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, I'm
And
not
you're
going
like,
to the Amazon.
well,
Yeah, it's coming to you. Well, the thing that's scary, and the reason why I know I feel more optimistic now about some of our, the United States, and then maybe our influence on the world's environmental things. But you've had the people who administer the government they're talking about Bolsonaro, Brazilian President Bolsonaro. The part that's so frightening is you're going, well, so this has probably been happening over some period of time and getting gradually worse. But it says that the study showed that that deforestation, the one single factor, and some of it is slash and burn agriculture, where they burn and then they clear cut and then they put cattle in. But the clear cutting and the fires together said it increased fourfold in the year 2019 compared to either of the two previous years. So that's like a real sudden recent event.
yeah.
And oh my gosh, this is too scary. Now, if you saw, there's a picture of they're talking about tipping points. As I said, I always probably put too many stories up, and so you need to take time to go through this. It talks about tipping points and
What's interesting about rainforest in general, I mean, there's the whole climate problem when you're ripping out rainforests and like we said, burning and such. And then there's also the whole biodiversity problem too, in places like Madagascar and such, where you have some species that are found nowhere else in the world, and yet their habitat is being encroached upon at an alarming rate. Same thing's happening in the Amazon. So what we're monkeying around with here, no pun intended, is a real problem.
Oh, it is. It is.
It's becoming a real problem.
Now, one good thing about this story, you probably didn't notice it, Libby, but I actually got this story, which is, Libby and I are more biologists. Robert he's more like the physicist. And this is from physics.org. They actually put this page up. So I appreciate that we were able to call on some physics people for some good biology. Not a bad thing. All right, I'm going to go back to the launch pad. Let me know if you got launched back or not.
I'm there.
Mine didn't launch back yet. Sometimes it's my browser's. Okay, so this one is really exciting to me. This is about the pawpaw.
Yay.
Now, the reason why I love pawpaws is because I have some pawpaw trees. I've been working my brain out trying to figure out how to.
Hi, my name is Steve Stein, and welcome to
Did yours come on?
Yeah.
Now, one of the biggest questions that I get from students is
Just,
which guitar course is right for
You had a commercial too?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if what I'll do, I'll turn your mic down. I'm going to try to play a little bit of this. What did mine do? My whole thing just went crazy. Uh-oh. I might have created a short between my. Oh no, there it is. Okay. So this is about pawpaws in bloom. Skip ads. I would love to just skip that ad. Okay. Wow, what a pleasure to be able to skip the ad here. So this is from gardenclips.com, and it's just a little brief thing about pawpaws. You should be watching it because that's where it's really cool. But come on, you can load. There you go. Play. I like the music. What do you think, Libby?
Yeah, that's great.
Kind of pawpaw music?
Mm-hmm.
This is a sight that warms my heart
Well.
when I look at our pawpaw tree, Asamina triloba, in full
Look at that.
bloom. Look at all the blooms
I'm
on
looking
this
at it.
tree.
You
This
don't
is
have to look
awesome.
at it, but I am.
We got about 25 or 30 fruit off of this last fall. I was a little worried about the survival of this tree through the winter. We had temperatures several nights below zero, I think 8 degrees below zero Fahrenheit in January and February, with lots of wind. And of course, this tree.
This guy looks like
about,
Rich Knoblich in this
14 or
video
15
when you get a
feet
chance to
tall,
see.
We couldn't really protect it, but it's It's made it through the winter beautifully. It's in full bloom right now. These wonderful little bell-shaped,
They're beautiful.
dark red, sometimes mahogany flowers, when pollinated, will turn into fruit that is edible. It's a wonderful, almost tropical tasting fruit that you can eat in September.
You
into
can mix with
October here.
ice cream. Oh,
They
we've
don't
done
travel
all of
well,
that.
so you have to eat them fresh. This is great.
Well, wasn't that nice? Now that was nice, but see, since Robert isn't here, I thought I'd send this out to him. Where, oh, where is dear little Robert? Where, oh, where is dear little Robert? Where, oh, where is dear little Robert? Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch, picking up pawpaws, put 'em in your pocket. Picking up pawpaws, put 'em in your pocket. Picking up pawpaws, put 'em in your pocket. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch. I'm sure that's going to just warm his heart.
Indeed.
Yeah, he's probably listening to the show right now, rolling on for. Now, the reason why this is important, I have pawpaw trees, and for the last 2 years they have started blooming because they're young ones. Libby has had pawpaw trees. How many did you were talking about having
I think
7
we
or
have
8?
7.
Oh man, you have a wealth of pawpaws. The thing that is so tough about pawpaw trees, besides even just getting them started, is you may have blossoms all over, and sometimes you will get no fruit. And people have wondered about that. There is a reason for that. The fruit, the pawpaw tree blossom is not pollinated by your typical little honeybees or bumblebees or sweat bees or any of those things. It is pollinated by the flies and things that like to reside on rotting flesh and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, the first time I posted pictures of these pawpaw blossoms from my trees, people said, "Well, you know what you got to do? You just got to get some roadkill, and you just got to lay it next to your plants or hang it in there." And I mentioned that to my wife as we were driving past what looked like a fresh squirrel kill on the road, and she said, "No, you're not stopping for roadkill." So, and you had a story about where a deer had died somewhere near your. Now, what happened with you?
Well, I didn't get as many pawpaws last year as I had a few years ago. But I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not. But we did have a dead deer close to our property that maybe.
And you
maybe
can
that
tell when
had-
they're close. They attract.
Well, it was interesting. It was one of those things where it was kind of in the thicket. I don't know
Yeah.
if it, went back in and just kind of died there. And so we didn't even see it for a long time. And I didn't really even smell it. But it turns out maybe that had something to do with
Well,
it.
yeah.
But yeah, there in the area where we live, there are a lot of pawpaw trees up on the hill.
Oh, good.
And so my guess is that animals have brought the seeds down, and the soil is really
Just
good
right for 'em,
there.
yeah.
And they seem to do fine, sort of in shadier areas too.
They do. They propagate. When you propagate them, you have to grow, like if you're growing them from seed or you have a young plant, it's better to have the first couple years of its growth in the shade, and then you do need. It's better to move them
Well,
in.
we were talking about that because there's some other trees around, and we were wondering if we should take a couple of those out to let now that the pawpaws are kind of established.
Yeah, they do
But
need more light.
Some of them are fairly close together too. But the thing about pawpaws is they don't get really gigantic.
No.
My pawpaw had a pawpaw, and it was in his front yard, and my dad actually had it certified as like the tallest one that had
Wow.
been documented in West Virginia or something.
That is
because
really cool.
He was really, really proud of that thing. And I remember that's one of the fond memories I have of pawpaws is when we would go visit my grandparents in the fall, which wasn't all that often, but when we would, and you'd step on one of those things, it'd be slippery, and you'd slide in the
Oh,
yard,
yeah.
and you'd smell that like really ultra ripe banana mango. I didn't know what a mango was at that time in my life. But anyway, when I was a kid, bananas, that was a thing. And I liked pawpaws.
Oh,
They got
I
a
heard.
lot of seeds in them. So it makes sense that if they fall in the right place, that they would be able to spring up kind of close together because
Yeah.
there are quite a few seeds in each one of them.
Yeah, just a real quick primer on pawpaws. First of all, if you do get seeds from a fruit, you can't a lot of people will think, oh yeah, I'm going to let them dry out and stuff. You literally can't let them dry out. In nature, they fall into some maybe wet soil and get covered with leaves. So they have to be maintained as a moist seed. Then the second thing is they need what's called cold stratification. In nature, that happens over the winter. They're sitting out there in the damp stuff, and it's cold. It has to have so many days of, and people that do it, like in a lab setting, would do it in a refrigerator. And the cold temperature actually eliminates some stuff that prevents them. These little seeds are smart. They're not going to just sprout any warm spell. It means they want to know that the winter is actually over. And then the last thing about the pollinators, one solution I think I've come up with, this is my solution. I'm going to offer it to you Paw producers out there. We just got a bunch of chicken thighs and stuff that we're going to barbecue. So I just peeled all the skin off the chicken. So, now they're low cholesterol too. That's good. But then I put them in a plastic bag so that they would not just completely dry out. They always put that, when you buy chicken, it always has that piece of absorbent material that's wet. And I know these things are going to start stinking pretty soon. So I'm putting them right under the tree. I have 2 sections of trees. But you have to make sure, because as my wife mentioned, we heard coyotes yelling last night. You don't want to attract raccoons and predators and things. So I covered it with these heavy metal milk crates and put rocks on it so nobody can get to it. Now that's my solution, okay? Because we have a no roadkill thing in our car. We don't. My wife says we're not putting roadkill into the car so we can put it under the pawpaw trees, and I think she might be reasonable there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but if you're ultra, you don't like anything to go to waste sort of situation.
Yeah.
I mean, if you see a dead
see
animal,
it-
there's nothing you're going to be able to do to revive it.
That's
So
right, and if you
may as well use it for something.
If you see roadkill in front of one of your friends' houses, it's certainly okay for you to do it. All right, I'm going to click on chestnut. When you get back.
I can't. I just can't. I'm lost in cyberland here.
Well, if you get back to the launch pad of science, well, the thing is, it's not fair to throw a new computer in front of anybody,
especially somebody as technically challenged as I am.
That's okay. Listen, there's a lot of technical challenging going on. So this is actually from the Cornell Alliance for Science. Now, Cornell, as you know, is a fine institution up in New York. This is kind of an overall summary of what's happening. There's a very long story in the attempt to restore the American chestnut. And now your dad, having been a person who worked in wildlife and forestry and stuff, probably has run across many a dead chestnut tree sitting somewhere where they would die standing up, and they would actually still be usable for years and years as wormy chestnut because they were a premium wood, like hardwood forest resident. Chestnut has a lot of acidity. It's like oak and some other things. It would be, the chestnut, American chestnut, if it could once again be the dominant tree in the forest, would replace all the, all that chemical treated deck wood that people have. So anyway, this is talking about the fact that there are university researchers in the New York system. At some other time we'll talk about it, but it's the State University of New York SUNY researcher William Powell, and they're in Syracuse, I believe. And I'm just for full disclosure, I'm actually, even as though I'm a West Virginia resident, I have joined the New York American Chestnut Foundation because they will actually send you seeds from just Native American chestnuts. And you're thinking, well, that's okay, but why would you want to plant Native American chestnuts just to have them die? The reason that it's important is that, I'll just read this first paragraph. University researchers are seeking approval to restore the iconic chestnut to American forests by using a genetically engineered variety that can tolerate the blight that has killed billions of wild trees. Now, sometimes there is some concern about something that is genetically modified. They go on to talk about the fact that there are already several trees. There's a genetically engineered poplar tree, virus-resistant papaya trees, and plum trees. The point is kind of like, it's not that you're creating some Frankenstein monster tree. In the case of chestnut, they've literally taken a single gene from wheat, which is naturally resistant to this particular virus, and they've been able to add this single gene to a pure American chestnut tree. So it's like 99.9999% pure American chestnut. Now, what they're really looking to do with their program, and why it's important that at this point we're getting close to the USDA perhaps approving it, they have to go through such rigorous stuff. Like even though the tree existed forever in the forest as we know the eastern forest, since it's a new plant, supposedly you have to then make sure that it doesn't outcompete, it doesn't somehow change the balance of, and they've gone through all these things for like I don't know, more than 5 years with this particular tree, and it's very close to probably being, as they said, if you look through the article, there's a deregulation petition, and data's been presented, and there's been a public, it's gone through all the whole process. What will happen is they have been for years sending out chestnut seeds to people like myself to plant in our own little properties, and I have some that are probably 8 feet tall now. They're actually Native American chestnut trees. And I have a couple others, a good friend of mine who has a nursery has planted, Scott Black, who Libby knows very well. The idea is that even if you could plant one of these chestnuts right now, you're not going to get any more seeds for like 8 years. So what they are doing within the research of State University of New York, they have been growing a variety that it's called Darling 58 after the scientist who first rescued one of the last big trees in New York, and they were able to preserve the pollen and do some things. But if you now have one of the new genetically engineered resistant plants, and you have it then planted, say it's a mature tree and it's now producing pollen, and you already have an established 8 or 10-year-old grove of American chestnuts that have not yet been hit by the blight, the pollination that will occur there will probably give you basically 50% blight-resistant trees. So as soon as the USDA approves this, there are already little tiny forests, they call them mother orchards. Isn't that nice? Mm-hmm. That will allow you to then have the pollination occur, and then you'll be able to start replanting. Now you'll have maybe 100 or 1,000 seeds that are resistant that you'll be able to distribute. And the idea of reforesting the American chestnut, as they say, the iconic American chestnut, the importance to the ecology of the eastern woodlands was just immense. It probably was one of the most important things in the decline of like a lot of animal species, and then for an entire culture, like the Native American culture of the United States, probably, if you've ever visited, if you're in the Knoxville, Tennessee area, and you visit the Great Smoky Mountains, the national park, one of the things you learn is that a typical tree would be like 15 bushels of nuts, and it supported everything, squirrels to deer to turkeys, and it basically meant that the native population could almost just live on that one thing. And when that thing disappeared, it was just like the potato famine or the buffalo disappearing from the plains. So anyway, it's a pretty big deal. Now, I'm going to click back and see, Libby, are you going to see if you're lost? Wait, I'm going to run over there. You have to talk while I'm running over there. No, you don't. I'm just going to show you where it is.
When I clicked off the video, then and then I saw launch, and that's what that meant. It didn't mean what I thought it meant.
Wait a minute.
Anyway, I'm going to have to bug out here in a couple minutes anyway, because we have a children's science book giveaway here. I've advertised it starting at noon, so I have to set my table out. Going to have that out from noon until 3. We have some surplus curriculum items, and if anybody wants to swing on by, they'll be
that is really cool.
Out in front of the Smart Center Market today.
That's your back button. See it?
Yeah, but I don't know how you got here.
Okay, I'm scrolling around. I'm going to go down to...
All right, what do we got?
Lumber.
Lumber.
Okay.
Oh, I have been following this because there are a couple things where we need to fix, And I'm like, wow, this is a bad time to need to fix anything that needs wood because the lumber prices have gone sky high.
Well, and this is one of those things that is really ticking me off because I just have a feeling that people go, well, it's because they just can't get enough. I actually saw something where all these Weyerhaeuser and all these people are saying, oh, well, really, there's no problem with supply of wood. We just can't get enough people to truck. I'm thinking, I always like it when people say, I call BS because the price, now, if you're on the Launchpad of Science, this is the one that says lumber. And the thing that is just unbelievable to me, I heard this first from a friend who started building a house. This is a retired doctor. And they poured the foundations for their house like late in the fall. And they said, well, with COVID, maybe we'll just wait this out. And, it's not bad to have your concrete foundation set for a little while to, have it get stronger. They said that the cost of lumber from last fall to this point in spring for their house had raised the price by $40,000. And I thought, well, that's my house isn't even worth $40,000. So, no. But according to this article, it says soaring lumber prices add, and this is probably on an average thing, add $36,000 to the cost of a new home. And a fierce land grab is only making it worse.
Man.
This is crazy.
Well, I'm not sure why there's such a rise in building new homes. I thought that a lot of this might have been from doing new projects at your existing
I'm
home.
sure I know that's got to be part of it.
And people sitting around during the pandemic going, I really should do this and that. And if you're fortunate enough to still have money, still have a job, et cetera, then you're going, I really should do that. I really should, blah, blah, blah. That's what I thought was happening, but it looks like it's new construction stuff.
Well, the thing that's strange. Okay, I'm gonna click on this video and I'll play the audio and you can just kind of listen along if it works. We'll see what their story is. Oh, T-Mobile's here.
Oh, wow.
All right.
We're saved.
I'll just let them talk. I don't want to mute. I'd have to make another motion to mute these guys.
They pop up everywhere.
It ends in. I can shut these guys off. Oh, look at that! Look at the power I have.
Wow.
Yeah, T-Mobile.
The
no
off
thanks.
button can't be
And
underestimated.
it's only $70 a month. I saw another one, Mint Mobile, that was much cheaper. Okay, so.
Material and land costs for the home builders are off the charts, adding to your cost for a newly built home. So let's start with lumber, which seems to set a new record really daily, up nearly 70% in just the last 2 months, up 340% from a year ago.
Oh my
and lumber
gosh.
doesn't just go into framing a house, it goes into added costs for cabinets, doors, windows, flooring. Then you've got your gypsum, that's drywall. Prices up nearly 7% from a year ago. Steel mill product prices at a new record high, up 18% in March. This is your beams, sheet metal products, and wiring. Copper also set a new record high this month. And finally, what do you put all this pricey stuff on? Well, you put it on land. And the price per single lot is up 11% so far this year compared with the same period last year. And that's because demand is so high, supply so low, new lot supply down 20% from a year ago. All this according to Zonda. And the inventory, it's tightest in San Diego, Baltimore, San Francisco, with Baltimore and Nashville seeing the biggest drops. So in the end, lot supply in 90% of the top markets tracked by Zonda is considered significantly undersupplied. And that, Kelly, is why you are paying more for a new home.
Wait a
Yeah,
minute.
no, I hear about it
Supply
all the
and
time
demand?
anecdotally. People, some who are involved in building a home, but just, you are aware in town the costs of every aspect of what's involved in putting one up. Here's my question, Diana. Mortgage rates are up. They're high. Now, we know they're still historically low, but is that having any impact on the housing market right now, or are all these other factors far more important?
Well, it actually helped fuel some of the higher home prices that we're seeing right now in the existing home market, especially because with mortgage rates in the fall were at such record lows that gave people additional purchasing power. They got in there. They were able to get into bidding wars. Now you're seeing rates shift higher and higher. We're about quarter to half percentage point higher than we were at the end of last year. That cuts into your purchasing power. And we did see both pending and new home sales, or pending home sales and closed home sales for existing homes dropped a bit over the last 2 months. And so we're seeing those buyers pull back. Of course, part of that's low supply, but it's also these higher prices. For new homes, the builders are still seeing huge demand. So you got to wonder if those higher mortgage rates really aren't a factor for those people who are paying that additional price premium already for the newly built home. So perhaps it's having an effect on existing home sales. Not so much in the new home market, though.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's fascinating. We'll see what happens as the spring plays out.
Yeah, fascinating. I have other words for it than fascinating.
Now, material and
hey,
land
wait a
costs
minute.
for the home builder.
Stop! I already got rid of you. Well, now the only thing that I am going to, this is like a little parenthetically, I might say, when the new census stuff came out, did you know, Libby? Did you see who was the absolute top loser of population in
Yeah, I know.
in the United States?
Yeah.
See, here in West Virginia, just as a little mathematical exercise for people, during the Civil War, the population of West Virginia was like 2 million some people, I think, and now it is at 1.8 or less, and it's the number one lost population among the 50 states. In fact, like as I said, we're going to lose one of our representatives in Congress. I mean, I have a choice, but I'm not sure how that works out. We'll see how that goes. So listen, hey, if you folks would like to move to West Virginia and run our property prices up, that would be just really wonderful. We'd love to have you come.
We have a lot to offer.
All right. Well, Libby, I appreciate you.
I'm going to put my books out.
You better get ready because this could be a lot of fun. Getting some new books out, some good sciencey books out for the science kids that like to go through this place.
Get out and enjoy the glorious day. If your weather where you are is as nice as it is here today, it looks like it's going to be gorgeous.
It's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And I should have taken the time to. I said Libby Strong, who is Robert's wife, holding down the fort at Smart Center Market here, and getting ready to provide some lovely books for the community here. All right, I'm going to go to. I'll tell you what. I'm just going to go back and jump quickly into some of the COVID things that I should cover here. One of the things I'm sure that everybody has seen is the coverage of what's happening in India. If you're back on radiosciencenews.org, Prime Minister Narendra Modi could have prevented India's disaster, a devastating COVID crisis, according to critics, but he didn't. So the thing that I have just been amazed at, because if, as I have, you've seen any of the footage of what's going on in India, it's really it's a stark, frightening situation. I mean, we're looking at things where they have, bonfires and things set up. They're doing cremations in parking lots, and they're having a huge. The part that's interesting is they're really just having a second surge. The CNN report basically starts with the fact that on April 17th, ahead of state elections, maskless Prime Minister.
It was very hard to quit.
Oh, gee
The
whiz.
withdrawals and headaches were so bad, I just didn't even want to quit. You see,
We have the automatic videos that pop up. Anyway, at the time when they should have been really, and this, of course, is across many places where we was basically kind of ready to just, open things up. As I said, they're having a second wave. And let me see if I can get this to work now.
Members of his ruling.
There we go. Hey, well. Well, come on, guys.
This one on Monday, despite the worsening pandemic. CNN's Ivan Watson reports. Less than 3 months ago.
Looks like we're going to have trouble with this. The basic thing, if I could just get the video to click off, the issue is that India is having across the world probably the worst recurrence of COVID, and it's in some ways it's just taken them, by surprise, because they're running out of things they're running out of course, oxygen to treat people. They're running out of hospital beds. The part that's just really stark is when you see something about somebody running out of wood for cremations. So if you take time to look through this chart, you'll see that unlike some places, you've heard that the United States may be looking to some extent at a fourth wave. The news as I listened this morning was that some areas of Oregon and Washington State are dealing what they actually consider to be a fourth wave. There's some charts here showing India's. The chart that's really stark here is the fact that you have a second wave of India going up, and then compared to the rest of the world going down. It's just really it's a frightening situation. So as my computer dances around doing crazy things here, I'm going to just going to say, please take the time to read through this article. Listen to the video if your video works better than mine. If my computer doesn't completely lock up. Okay, where are we, guys? All right. So let me get back to the Launchpad of Science. I'm going to go to the next. My next story is about DigiDog. Let me double check on my broadcast thing here. Yeah, it's still working fine. So, well, I don't know. There we go. Broadcast is still working. DigiDog, you may have been lucky enough to see Boston Dynamics in the I say the release is maybe not the best word, but they have designed some really amazing robots. One of them that probably was designed specifically or most specifically for military use. What they were kind of looking for was something that would be like a pack animal. So, you think about those miners in the Yukon and they need something to carry their stuff, or you think about military people who need something to carry, weapons and ammo and food supplies. So they came up with what basically was a quadruped. And so they were thinking we could make it most friendly by turning it into a dog. And the story that just came out from New York City was where the police department was going to be buying a bunch of these, what they called DigiDogs, which basically is the Boston Dynamics robot dog configuration. And they were going to deploy it. Of course, somebody said, well, they're going to $94,000 contract, and they were going to deploy it mostly in marginal neighborhoods. Anyway, it was so creepy that everybody, it says creepy robot dog loses job with the New York Police Department. And it is a sad thing that the DigiDog, somebody said they called it Spot. And the spokesman for Mayor de Blasio said, it's creepy, alienating, and sends the wrong message to New Yorkers. So sadly, they've returned DigiDog to Boston Dynamics, and hopefully they'll find a better use for it. Now, there are a whole bunch of other things. One of the things that I am really excited about, because as they talked about Amtrak Joe, of course, our president, Joe Biden, has ridden Amtrak for so long, and he was in Philadelphia. If you look at if you're on radiosciencenews.org and you see the Launchpad of Science, I'm going to go to the Amtrak 50th anniversary story, because I'm a big fan of Amtrak. I've had the opportunity to travel on it several times. One of the things in the new proposals for infrastructure improvement is big money to rails, and Amtrak it says. During a speech at the 30th Street Station in Philadelphia, Biden touted his American Jobs Plan, which calls for an unprecedented $80 billion investment in rail. Now, that is really nice. I see Joe's got his mask and his cool hat on, and I think he made the joke while he was in Philadelphia that the only time he was on Amtrak in Philadelphia is when he fell asleep and ended up there, because he always rode the Amtrak from D.C. back to his home, rather than having some chauffeur or something. All right. Biden calls for more cash. All right, a little bit of jumpiness with my browser this morning. All right, I'm going to get back to the Launchpad of Science, where it says APA Heritage. And if you are familiar with APA Heritage, you know that is Asian. And I'm going to click on the actual website for Asian Pacific Heritage. So Asian Pacific American APA Heritage Month has been announced, and this is actually as it says, this is the beginning of May is the Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. The Library of Congress, National Archives, Records Administration, and all these other folks are involved in it. And this particular site is kind of an all-encompassing thing that has a lot of great stuff. Stories from Veterans Administration, but this is a great calendar of events. And the reason why I was kind of excited about this, and I knew Robert would be excited. The very first event that they're showing is on May 5th. It's the Samoan Studies Institute, Students Association for Samoa, and one of the things that some people don't know about Robert is that after having done some work in the Peace Corps, he became a teacher and taught in Samoa for years and years. Did some really cool things there, and I think probably added a lot to the educational texture of Samoa. And so that's one of the first things. There's a Samoan Studies thing, Culinasia, the future of Asian food in America. There's a May 6th, Jim Lee and Asian American Superheroes. These are all events that you can actually, like, they're live performances or online conferences and events and things. So this is really neat. I just want to call your attention to the fact that at this time when there has been some real concern about what's been going on in the Asian community and some of the attacks and issues that have resulted from some political concepts that we can all do without. This is really neat to know that the Asian and Pacific American Heritage Month is May, and it's first day today, and some cool events going on. All right, I'm going past the Amtrak 50th, just saying that the one of the things that certainly is infrastructure is our rail system. If you, as I have, were able to take advantage of traveling on Amtrak just for fun or business or whatever it is, you know that unlike other countries that are, people have often pointed out, if in terms of infrastructure, places like China and Japan and places that have the French have the La Plus Vitesse, all these high-speed rail systems. But even if you're not talking about high-speed rail, the idea that we could do a little bit more with our rail systems in the United States is really a really good concept. It says, imagine, they're talking about some of the high-speed rail. Imagine a 2-hour train ride between Atlanta and Charlotte at 220 miles per hour, a 2.5-hour trip between Chicago and Detroit, or faster and more regular trips between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. They're talking about the fact that on the plans, or at least what they're hoping to be looking at. Say if you're think what a great opportunity if we could connect Milwaukee to Green Bay to Madison, or of course, as Joe Biden would say, if you could take Scranton and Allentown and connect them to New York, Indianapolis to Louisville. Obviously it's a no-brainer, wonderful idea. So please look that over, and hey, I would say advocate to your Congress people that this is one of the things we probably would like to have. Now, I'm going to run down to the right-hand side, and since we were just talking about the infrastructure, one of the things we like to have is a chart. And this week's chart, it says InfraChart. It's kind of tough to figure out what all is included in what President Biden is advocating in. It says here, this is the upshot from the New York Times, Biden's $4 trillion economic plan in one chart. So when you get to this chart, you will scroll down, or maybe you won't if your computer is acting weird. Here we go. President Biden released the second portion of the economic plan on Wednesday, $1.8 trillion in new spending and tax cuts over 10 years. And that's on top of the $2.3 trillion infrastructure plan. And so this is a really big, round, interesting pizza pie of a chart. And it has things that are what they sort of have indicated are strictly the infrastructure plan and then the families plan. Now, as you understand, if you have been listening to President Biden and the folks that are advocating for what he's doing, one of the things that they are definitely saying is that, the typical infrastructure, everybody used to think, well, infrastructure just meant transportation. If you have highways and you have rails and you have, airports and all that kind of stuff, then you're dealing with infrastructure because businesses do business and they deliver stuff, or you drive somewhere to get it. And so it's kind of really the nuts and bolts things. But the concept that the Biden administration is putting forward, and I'll let you look at this chart and think about it too, is including the fact that we're not we're not in the same kind of 20th century, or in some cases 19th century thinking where, well, we're going to build, so you think of what are the big infrastructure things? Well, the Transcontinental Railroad, there was one. We're talking about something in the 1800s, and then, of course, the Eisenhower interstate system, that was highways. But now, the things that actually play into our economy and what's going to be relevant to jobs are other things. They have in-home care for people with disabilities and older adults, a whole section on jobs and innovation, a whole section on education, child and family support, tax credits for all sorts of things. So beyond the things that you would consider, buildings and utilities, transportation, and all that, they're looking at a more holistic approach to what they would consider the infrastructure. And I would say that sometimes it's hard to understand that, or maybe people think, well, yeah, but if it isn't a bridge or it isn't a road or isn't, then it's not infrastructure. But having just gone through a year or so of the pandemic that we've all endured, one of the things that people recognize right away is that the huge differences in the infrastructure of delivering the internet. And of course, one of the things included in these propositions is that they're going to do a lot that will provide broadband to places that don't have it. Now, being here in West Virginia, where I can drive not that far from my house and you can't even get cell phone coverage, understanding that having an infrastructure that boosts everybody's access to the internet and levels the playing field is a big deal relative to businesses and then relative to education. So anyway, there's a lot to look at there. I'm going to jump into a story. If you're on the Launchpad of Science at radiosciencenews.org, this is about, it says S, then CAR, and then it says T. I was also kind of happy to find this on the physics.org page, which has a section that's it's a whole medical and then express with stories about interesting things that are happening in the world of medicine. And one of the things that Robert and I will often say after we finish an episode of Radio Science News is that even though it doesn't get massive coverage, the various things that are coming out almost daily or every week within the realm of medical science, technology are really encouraging. Now, this particular one it's about the global race for T-cell receptor that literally zeroes in on and annihilates solid tumors. Now, in the context of, again, one of the things that the Biden administration is talking about is an all-out war on cancer. This is really, really amazing news. It says immunobiologists in China have designed a synthetic, and that's hence the S, synthetic T-cell receptor for anti-cancer therapy, engineering the protein not only with the capability to seek and destroy solid tumors, but endowing this cancer-fighting weapon with potent endurance to get the job done. All right, so now this is going to be a fairly long story, and if you're not familiar with what has been known as CAR-T, the C-A-R-T treatment for cancer, the CAR, little acronym CAR, stands for chimeric antigen receptor. That's been a really important leap forward in cancer treatments, and a lot of people have been working on that. But the problem is it's been very useful for some things, like for lymphomas and certain leukemias, but in terms of solid tumors like breast cancer, brain cancer, all these things, it hasn't been quite as powerful. So the thing that's really a big boost here in this whole process is that you actually have a way of making this thing much more effective. So as I say, this is a lot to read through, and if you're not familiar with this concept to begin with, take my advice and read this and understand that this synthetic chimeric antigen receptor T-cell therapy is really a big deal and is good stuff. Get a little theme song going here. I think probably the most promising thing is they've started some animal studies, and it actually was very effective against something very serious like glioblastomas. So listen, I'm going to take the time to invite you back next week, Radio Science News, 11 to 12 on Saturday. If you're on the page, you can find out other ways to enjoy it later.